Hi, Midsummer viewers. It's Jessica. I'm here with Amber Smith, the author of Something Like Gravity. Comes out this Tuesday, June 18th. That's so exciting.
Yes.
And we're here having some rounds of beer at Vortex Bottle Shop here in Harrisburg. We are having some kind of sour that I already forgot the name of.
It's very good though.
Yes. Key lime and something. I don't know. So, hi. Thanks so much for sitting down with me.
Thank you. Yes, I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. Are you so excited about the release of this?
Yes, I really am. I can't believe this book is finally a real thing.
It was so good. I can tell you honestly that I teared up reading this multiple times, and like happy tears and also just frustration tears in certain parts, which I'm sure you can understand in those areas. No spoilers. So can you tell me a little bit about what inspired you to create the character of Chris and create the character of Maya and their story? What brought them together for you in their mind?
Well, you know, it's funny. I did not set out to write a love story with this book, but that's what happened. So the book is told in the alternating points of view of Chris and Maya, but originally I conceived of these as two separate books.
Really?
Yeah, so Chris's story was primarily about coming out as trans and all of the changes that he was going through in his life with his relationships with family and friends, his relationship with himself, and trying to figure out, you know, who he was going to become.
Right.
And also dealing with a lot of heavy, traumatic stuff that happened in his past. And Maya's story was about her grieving the loss of her sister, who she had a very complicated relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working on these two books side by side, and I like to work on two different things at the same time because,
Really?
you know, when I get stuck on one thing, instead of just sitting there and like waiting to figure it out, I'll usually go and try to work on something else for a little bit and come back to the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's sort of worked itself out. But with these two books, I kind of hit a wall at the same time with both of them. And this also coincided with a lot of the really tumultuous political climate just ramping up, which, you know, it's still obviously going on now, but I think I hit a wall with both of these books because both of their stories were just so depressing in a way, which, you know, I kind of like to go into those subjects, but I think each character just felt so lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a thought with Chris that I wanted to give him a love interest.
Right.
And as I started thinking about, okay, well, what type of person would be a good match for Chris?
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately thought, oh my gosh, it's Maya. It's Maya from this other book I've been working on.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I needed to make this not a story about coming out or grieving, but about falling in love, and how falling in love can be the thing that helps you get through all of the difficult things that you're working out in your life.
Yeah, and that's something that I think really plays really, really well in Something Like Gravity, is that both characters are so isolated, and yet, you know, it's this great boy, girl next door type thing, which is an old trope, but it works so well here because there's so much depth to each of the characters that they don't know going into this, when it's like, oh, there's the cute boy who's staying next door, oh, there's this cute girl who's next door, she's always got a camera, what's that about? I think that it just works so well, and I loved that entire dynamic. So it makes me really happy that you did it that way. So I'm really glad that the two books hit a wall and then they came together to make this book.
Me too.
Yeah. So was there anything you found really challenging about writing this?
You know, I think one of the most challenging things was to just represent each of these characters in a way that was thoughtful and sensitive, and because with Maya's character, she's going through this whole grieving process, and I wanted to make sure I was representing that experience in a way that felt real. And so I really based a lot of that on my own experience with loss and grieving.
And that's something I think a lot of readers can relate to. It might not be a sister, or it might not be even somebody related to them, but even somebody you just admire. I hate that it's not touched on more in YA. I wish that true grief is something that readers would be able to experience through books, but I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, and with Chris, I had some different challenges. So, Chris is transgender. I'm not transgender. I am queer. And so one of the things I tried to find the common experiences between myself and Chris. And so, in a lot of ways, Chris is very much like me.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to make sure I was portraying him as a transgender man in a way that did not feel exploitative in any way,
right,
because that is not my experience. So I had a lot of people read Chris's sections.
So some sensitivity readers?
Yeah. Some sensitivity readers, and also just friends who I know I've talked with a lot about their own experiences. So I did a lot of, I guess you would call it research, but it was more anecdotal type research.
Right.
Just listening to other people's experiences and trying to find those threads that I felt very emotionally connected to, so that Chris ends up feeling like a real, whole, complicated, flawed human being.
Yeah, I will say, I don't want to give a spoiler away, but once a certain character starts to use his pronouns, and the shock that Chris feels of hearing that pronoun used, I actually originally started flagging all the times that character misgendered them. Just at first, because I was like, okay, because I know that was going to come back up later, and so I think that was done really well, because that character's struggling with gendering Chris specifically in the way that it should be. I know that these characters and being so visible is so important to all of my friends who are in the community, and it's just, these are the books that I'm like, read this! And I shove it in their face. So this is going to be one of those.
Good! That makes me really happy to hear that, yeah.
So my next question would be, what do you have to say to someone who is young and queer that would be reading this book? What would you want them to take away from this?
Well, every time I am writing a book or creating a character, I'm always, in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking about what was it that I really needed to see when I was a teenager that would have made me feel less alone, would have made me feel like my experiences were validated. I feel like history is very much repeating itself. Like, when I was coming of age back in the 90s, I faced a lot of discrimination, and I feel like we've done so much work as a community to move things forward, and now there's this whole section of the LGBTQ community that I feel like they're just going through everything that I went through all over again, and so I very much connect with what trans youth are going through right now. I know firsthand how alienating and isolating it can feel to not know if you're going to be loved or accepted or safe even. And so, I think what I want readers to come away with, particularly with Chris's character, is, this feeling that they're seen. And there are people out there who understand and know what they're going through. I hope that this book gives young people hope that things will get better, because they really do. I really would want queer youth today to be able to know that it can happen. Things do get better. Whatever their experience might be right now, it's not going to be their experience forever.
And I'm sure that there's so many people who are just so happy to see themselves reflected on a page like this. And to have authors like you doing, stories like this. Because again, they're just not, even with own voices now, books like this are still very far and in between.
Yeah.
Do you ever do any volunteer work with any of the queer youth around here?
Yes, I do a little bit. We have Time Out Youth.
I do some
in Charlotte.
fundraisers with Time Out Youth.
Yeah, and then there's an organization in the Lake Norman, Davidson area called LKN Connects, Lake Norman Connects. And we're actually partnering with them for my book launch.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yes, every book that is being sold at my book release party, which is happening on my release date at Mainstreet Books in Davidson. The bookstore and I are collaborating to each give $2 to this organization that serves LGBTQ youth. For every book sold, $2 will go. Those organizations that serve LGBTQ youth are so important, and I know, like, my girlfriend was, we're both now in our 30s, but she was one of the original members of Time Out Youth. So she was one of the original kids in Charlotte who really benefited from being able to have that community for the first time. And, we live in the South, so opportunities like that are very rare, even now. Especially when, Charlotte, where we live, is more of a, how do I want to say it, a progressive city.
Yeah.
But, often I feel like just stepping outside of the city limits, it's sort of like going back in time.
Oh, yeah.
And,
even just coming to Harrisburg or going into Concord.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. So Carson, North Carolina, was that based off of?
It was, so it's a fictional town.
I actually was like, is that a real place? I was like, I was born and raised in North Carolina. I was like, I don't think that's a real place, but I didn't even look it up. I just went with it.
It's fictional, but it's supposed to be about an hour or so outside of Charlotte.
Right.
So it's based on a lot of those towns that, I've been to that are kind of right on the outskirts. And
I imagined it as kind of one of those towns you drive through to get to the beach.
Yes.
Those small communities.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
With like 2 stoplights and the speed limit's 70 and all of a sudden it's 35.
Yeah.
Just through the one street. And then,
yes. That's very much what Carson is like.
Yeah. That's what I picked up on. I was just like, that's what I think it is. So what's next for you after this? After something like Gravity is super popular and everyone loves it.
Well, this is sort of I don't know how much I can really talk about it.
Oh,
because
well, speak in code.
So I actually am not sure what book is going to be coming out next. So I have a few different ideas that are with my agent right now, and so I guess what I can say is that
they're good ideas.
They're the best ideas I've ever had. I am experimenting a little bit with some new genres and also some new styles of writing. So I've always really loved novels in verse.
Yeah.
And I remember first reading, like back in high school, Sonia Sohn's first book in verse. It was called Stop Pretending. And it's a short book, but it's so beautiful. And it was the first book I ever read that was written in verse.
Yeah.
And I've actually always written poetry myself. I've wrote poetry since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so I've wanted to experiment with writing in verse for a while. So
so we might be looking forward to that.
Possibly. We'll see if my editor likes it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of kind of pushing my boundaries with each book.
Yeah.
Well,
that's all I've got for you. Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me and having a beer with me.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Oh, yeah. We live like 10 minutes away from each other.
Give me a call. I'd love to meet up.
Yeah. Come have beer with us.
Yeah.
Come hang out in Harrisburg. But Something Like Gravity, out this Tuesday, June 18th, 2019, right in the middle of Pride Month.
Yes.
So exciting.
Timing.
So happy Pride and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. So now it's recording. We're just going to do this, I guess. That's what Christine told me to do.
Okay, both of us?
Oh, we can both clap if you want to. In unison. Yay. No. Okay. We're bad at this.